that should start one recording. Let me start the YouTube here. Okay, so live on YouTube. Okay. Hold on here. Something is not cooperating with me on the YouTube. Bear with me here, sorry.
All right, to fill the awkward silence, I'm going to tell you about the cupcakes I made over the weekend. I found a recipe for it was a spiced sweet potato cupcake with a caramel cream cheese icing with roasted marshmallows on the top, and they were a hit. So sometime I'll have to do them again and bring them into the city. But I'm going to make pumpkin pie bars tomorrow so they can chill. And I've made pumpkin pie before, but these pumpkin pie bars have a shortbread cookie crust, and they're just the coolest thing ever. So that is the new tradition, is bars.
Joe Vunich, can you see if you click on the dots at the bottom to see if you're able to record to YouTube Live? The City of Wildwood account is not popping up on my computer.
Steve, when I hit record, it says I need to get permission from you to be able to try that.
Okay.
Can you make me a co-host?
Yes, I can. Let me go over here. Okay.
Steve, I can't get to it.
Nor can I, for some reason. It shows my account, another account, but the City of Wildwood account, which is the one we need to choose for recording to YouTube, isn't popping up. So we are recording to the cloud, so we're okay. We'll move forward. We'll back that up later. So Chair Edens, we can go forward.
Okay, all right. We will go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is Tuesday, November 23rd. Happy early Thanksgiving. Miss Patrick, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Chair Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Galani.
Here.
Councilmember Jaxie. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
And Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
All committee members accounted for, with Mr. Jaxie absent.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I get a motion on the floor to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Clark. Do we have any changes to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining?
I'm an abstain.
Abstain.
I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay.
Abstain.
2 abstentions, McCutcheon and Flasher. Anybody else? Okay, moving right along. We have one item that's ready for action. We can go ahead and promote. It looks like we've got two visitors from Historic Preservation, Dan Rounton and Scott as well. As they're getting promoted, I just wanted to do a Hollywood Square Wave introduction to our speaker, Ben White. I've been sending out lots of meetings lots of emails to folks about Main Street Connection, but I wanted to go ahead and do some introductions. So, Mr. Cross, if you want to kind of introduce yourself, this is our city administrator. And we've got Mr. Vunich, our Director of Planning and Parks. We've got Miss Patrick, she runs the HR department, and we have our new Assistant Director of Parks. It's Ripito, am I pronouncing that right? Yep, Miss Ripito as well. And so the Economic Development Committee is made up of council members. There's one per ward. I'm pleased to be able to chair the meeting, and then our Historic Preservation Commission has citizen volunteers, and there's also two council members that get reappointed on one-year terms as liaisons as well, that are non-voting members. So we've got two lovely citizens that are going to join us, and so with that we'll take it over to you, and then you can let us know when it's appropriate to answer or ask questions. So thank you.
All right, I just have a short presentation that I'll get into.
And I did share the article on the Del Mar Divide, so everybody is aware of the news from the weekend.
Let's do, hold on. Okay, can you guys just see the presentation, not the notes part? All right, great. Well, good evening.
Hello.
So my name is Ben White. I'm the Program Outreach Specialist for Missouri Main Street Connection. And so just a little bit about me. I was actually the local program director and staff in Chillicothe. Was here for about 7 years before transitioning over to this role a little over 2 years ago. And so a little bit about my background. I am a graduate of Southeast Missouri State down in Cape Girardeau. Got my bachelor's in historic preservation, and then went on and got my master's in public administration from the University of Illinois Springfield. And so a lot of my current role focuses on helping newer communities with our community empowerment grant program, which I'll get into here towards the end of the presentation. And so helping communities to build up a local Main Street downtown focused organization, and then take them through essentially some strategic planning with feedback from the community through town halls, survey information, pairing that with market demographic information to really start to dive into strategies and implementation of those strategies for the community. So it's a lot of community feedback goes into this program that I administer. And so I wanted to dive into really what is Main Street. And so first, Main Street is an organization. You have the National Main Street Center, which was formed in the 1980s as kind of this this response to all of these strip malls and everyone moving out of these urban cores, rural cores, moving into suburbs and moving away from that traditional downtown. And so all of these big building owners in those downtowns reached out to the National Trust for Historic Preservation and said, hey, we need some help. These buildings are in disarray. We haven't had tenants for years because everyone's moving out. What do we need to do? And so that's how the Main Street movement was born, to comprehensively revitalize these downtown historic cores of communities. And so out of that, we also have coordinating programs, state coordinating programs. And so that's who I work for, Missouri Main Street Connection. And so we actually formed in 1989 we had 5 pilot programs across the state of Missouri. And so we were actually a program under the Department of Economic Development all the way up to about 2005, when a lot of that funding ended up shifting out of a lot of these programs, arts councils, humanities, those types of things. And so we actually broke off from the state of Missouri and created our own not-for-profit in 2006. And so that's a lot of what our history is. And then you have the local nonprofit organizations that are really those boots on the ground, the people that have their ear to the community and what they want to do, and the types of events and activities that they want to do as an organization and as a community. It's a methodology, and so it's a lot different than some other economic development practices, because it really solely focuses on revitalizing that older traditional district in communities. And so that's kind of what sets it apart from other economic development practices, is that's traditionally what the Main Street movement about, is focusing on that historic core of a community. It's a network that connects communities, other state coordinating programs, and downtown professionals. Main Streeters love to share. They love to share resources, share professionals, share ideas. We have a saying in Main Street, we like to rip off and duplicate. And so we like to take what a community is doing and really make it our own, because there's no point in reinventing the wheel if someone's done it successfully or even unsuccessfully. We can learn from those mistakes there. It's a brand, so it is seen as the premier downtown revitalization program and a registered trademark. But probably my favorite one on this list is that it's really this advocate, this return to community self-reliance. It's this realization that someone on the national level, someone at the state level like me, is not going to come in and really save the community, coming on a white horse and save it. That it's really going to be the people in the community that know their community the best that are going to help save and revitalize the community and that downtown. Well, we are more than willing to provide resources to help guide you along those efforts, but it's going to take that volunteer and those people in the community that have that passion to revitalize their town that are going to do it. And so again, I work for Missouri Main Street Connection, and so we are a coordinating program, which there are over 40 coordinating programs across the US to help provide resources for the local programs. So we are actually in over 170 communities all across the state of Missouri. And so those with the stars are certified Main Street communities across the state. And then those with the circles there are communities that are seeking assistance and are working towards that goal of having a Main Street organization, 501c3, in their community, working that Main Street model. These numbers are actually a little bit old. This is through 2019. So actually at this point, and since we started taking statistics all the way back in 2006, at this point, we have over $1 billion of public and private investment just in that historic core of those communities that have submitted economic data to us. And so in that time, there's also been, actually new statistics say that we are over 900 net new businesses. And so that is, again, just the additional, of businesses there. So if you take out the ones that are lost and the new ones there, that is the net positive there is 829 net new businesses, and then over 4,000 net new jobs as a result of those businesses as well. And the national numbers are even more staggering. And so over $85 billion since they started taking statistics in 1980, and almost 300,000 buildings rehabilitated in that time as well. And so this is a quote from Donovan Ripkema, who is an economist that studies the effects of historic preservation. And he says that there's simply no more cost-effective economic development program of any type on any scale anywhere in the country than Main Street. And so really you get the biggest bang for the buck using this type of this programming here. You get your the biggest reinvestment from utilizing this model, because Main Street works. And so Main Street really had its core, I mentioned earlier, is about historic preservation. It's about preserving that historic core of a community. Mostly it's about commercial development too. There is some residential development as part of the movement as well. Mostly that has to do with some of the second stories of these mixed use development buildings, but most of the time Main Street revitalization efforts focus on the commercial development, that first floor development of buildings there. And so Main Street is economic development in that sense as well. Main Street is all about being inclusive. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, we're all about making sure that we're getting community feedback in things that we're doing. Now, we're not just doing things to do things. That it's not just 2 or 3, 4 people around a table making decisions, unilaterally about, the focus of the community, the focus of downtown, and what needs to be done moving forward. It's about getting that community feedback and implementing that community feedback. And so that's what I mean about being inclusive in all of our efforts there. So Main Street, these concepts really transfer to the entire community because it can be used in overall community development as well. So how do we do that? So that's through the Main Street 4-point approach. And so this is a comprehensive approach to revitalization. First, you have the organization point, which really helps to build consensus, volunteerism, investment for the different things that we need to do, and figuring out those partnerships within the community. So it's not just the organization doing things, but figuring out, who can we partner with at the city? Who do we need to partner with? What's the HPC, with the parks, to do these kinds of projects. So that's really what the organization point focuses on. It's kind of the bedrock point, with all the other points lie on. Then you have design. So that's really working with property and business owners to really enhance the downtown's physical appearance while preserving the community. So building renovations, but also like beautification type efforts fall within that design point, really that aesthetic, those things that you're like, wow, that looks really cool. That's usually design as you're kind of walking down the street there. Then you have the economic side, which is economic vitality. And so that's working with existing and potential businesses for business development, whether again, that's existing businesses and trying to grow their business and make it stronger, or trying to recruit businesses strategically to come into the downtown there. And then partnering with those property owners to help develop those spaces as well. Then you have the social side of things. This is what we like to call kind of the fun point. This is promotion. This is all about promoting the downtown as really the center of activity, this fun place to be. This is where a lot of the events kind of fall under. But it's also just, again, promoting fun, promoting that image of downtown as this great place to come and to spend their hard-earned money in these local stores here. And so all 4 of these points take on development responsibilities. And so organization develops the partners and the resources. Design develops the spaces and places. Economic vitality really helps to develop those entrepreneurs and businesses. And promotion develops the customers. So again, each one of these has responsibilities when it comes to economic development. So I want to dive into now is the Community Empowerment Grant. And so this is really our premier grant program that we offer here at Missouri Main Street Connection. And so what it is it provides technical assistance and training to communities. It's a 60-40 cost share. And so the value of the grant in all is $30,800. And so 60% of that is contributed in services and trainings and the work that we as staff of Missouri Main Street put into it. It's our travel cost, the time that we put into it. So that is worth $18,480. And 40% of it is contributed in cash by the community itself. So whether that's the city, whether that's fundraising for those efforts. And so that amount is $12,320. And so this is a 2-year program that we take you through. So we gather feedback through these 8 different trainings that we do here. So that first one is we immediately jump into a town hall and stakeholder meeting to gather feedback early on in this process. And so this is a great way to announce what's going on in the community, what the Community Empowerment Grant is, what's going to be happening here these next couple of years. We teach the community about what Main Street is, but then we also give them an opportunity to provide feedback on what they want to see in downtown. And so it usually opens up a lot of the leadership's eyes on what the community wants to see. And so we use this throughout the entire programming. We call them WIGs, so they're wildly important goals. And so we use that the entire time as we're going through this to really help to guide our efforts for the activities that we need and want to do. Then we have different organizational visits that we come to the community and do, whether that's board training. And so again, I mentioned one of the things that you have to do as part of this grant is to set up your own 501c3. We handhold, we help you set up that 501c3, set up a new board of directors that is just specifically focused on downtown development. And so as part of that, we train that, either that new board or an existing organization's board, on what it means to be a Main Street board member and what that looks like. And then we dive straight into strategy identification. Again, taking advantage of those town hall wigs, taking advantage of some market demographic information to help identify some strategies. And then we really dive into the development and implementation process. You know, what do we need to do in order to get these things done? What are some funding sources that we could utilize? And I'll bring examples from different communities all across the state that have used different funding models for different things that the community is wanting to do. And then we dive into volunteer management. Now that we kind of know what we want to do, we dive back into how to find volunteers for the different things that we're wanting to do. I mentioned too, that as part of this, we do some additional survey work after that town hall meeting to help pair it with some additional primary data. We do some data collection on our side, take some market demographic information to help identify those strategies for you guys. Then that last thing that we do is what we call a technical service. And so this visit is really just customized to the community itself. And so that can be things like bringing in someone to do facade renderings, which you can see there on the page there, for a couple of interested building owners that are really wanting to revitalize their buildings there, but they just don't know where to start really with it or what it should look like. And so we have a consultant that we use for a lot of our facade renderings, so we can absolutely bring in for that kind of project. Or it could just be someone wanting to know more information about funding of a specific event or a specific type of activity. And so we can bring in someone from a different Main Street community that has done a project like that, that can talk about how they got volunteers for that project. You know, what was the funding for that? You know, what were they able to do for it? And so it is pretty wide open and something that we identify along the way. That is, again, so specialized just for the community and pretty wide open on how we really finish out the grant itself. So these are additional things that are also provided as part of that community empowerment grant application or part of the process there. And so one of the more important ones is an organization action plan. And so really it's this roadmap of when the trainings are projected to be. So usually we like to do it every 3-4 months there. The different projects that need to be done in between, providing resources for those different projects, when our trainings will be. So we have workshops and conferences that we actually put on as an organization that'll be in that organization action plan. And so again, it's just kind of this roadmap on where we are going for those 2 years there to help kind of keep us on track and again, emphasize where we will end up and where we're going currently. And then we're always available consultation by phone, by email, to answer any questions along the way. We're incredibly involved in the process and working with the communities there and checking to see how things are going. As part of that, you also have access to National Main Street and
Okay, I'm back. Did anybody else drop off or did I just freeze and it happened to everybody?
I don't know what happened.
I dropped off too.
Okay. Well, when I last heard you, I think you were saying that you were available by phone or for coaching, and did we cut you off, or do you have anything else?
I was going to give you the training dates.
Okay,
that-
that would be helpful.
Yes, that was actually the last part, so we get so close. So let's dive back into it. All right, so in order to actually be eligible for the community empowerment grant, you have to attend one of 3 workshops that we do. So we offer 3 rounds of the community empowerment grant. So the first one of the year is February 2nd. They're all going to be in Jefferson City in the Capitol Office building there. And so you'll see more information. I'll push out more information about where that is and what room it is. But mark your calendars because that really dives into more than I can even give you here about what the actual application process looks like, what we're looking for a successful application. And so you'll get all of those dates in there. But again, to be eligible for the community empowerment grant, you guys have to actually attend one of these 3 workshops. So it's February 2nd, May 4th, and then August 17th. So that's my information. If you guys have any questions, and I will open it up if there's any questions right now.
Well, I do want the committee and our guests to know that I did speak with Ben before I scheduled him, and we talked about what wild look like as a community. He does have a copy of the Economic Development Guide, information about historic preservation in our community, and that tourism link worked really well. That was a nice link that we could use to integrate different documents. In the
I just
chat.
put my information.
Oh, okay, it's in the chat. Thank you. So one of the things that Ben and I talked about is how, Wildwood came together as a bunch of different little historic communities, and so while we do have a town center, designation, we have areas in the community that are still in business districts that have a completely different feel. When you cross that 109 divide, you have historic businesses on Pond. And we have a wonderful schoolhouse as well that we've restored. And I wouldn't necessarily think that my first gut instinct wouldn't be that, oh yes, we need a 501c3, but during the presentation I was thinking about how the city's really tried to educate the community, get community input, and do things that our businesses have requested and have been part of our master plan, like extending sewer or extending sidewalks in that area, and it hasn't gone over too well. And we really weren't able to get that far. So maybe it is something that would help us bridge that divide a little bit more. And certainly, I'm not sure, Ben, we were looking at preserving a section of the old original Route 66, which we still have, and kind of trying to theme some historic tourism around that with a roadside park. Is that something that would be grant eligible, you think? Or if it's not an actual physical business?
My gut instinct is probably not, because again, we kind of focus on commercial development. So if there's not much building commercial in there, it's going to be hard to do our model of it, of kind of revitalizing that commercial district itself. And that's a lot of what we focus on.
And
Development.
Is the benefit of the nonprofit that some of that money can go directly to a business with a historic front, rather than so that the city doesn't have to own the property?
That's some of it, but a lot of it is having a focused organization that focuses specifically on just downtown development, commercial development of historic cores of this, that is just focused on that. Is the reason why we have to, for this community empowerment grant, we have to be working with a separate 501c3, is because it's someone that's just has that that's in their purview there.
Okay, does anybody else on the committee have any questions or staff? Not all at once. I was thinking about areas that might be beneficial, and I'm not sure if having a previous economic development guide that had some stakeholder input would give us a leg up on a grant application or not.
Doesn't hurt. It's something that we have used in strategy development and identification is something like that. So it doesn't hurt for sure.
Looks like Commissioner Scott from HPC has a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Sorry, my picture is not up there, but you're not missing much. My camera's not working. We have, and as Laura said, throughout the area, these old settlements or communities that are really no longer commercial. They're now residences and that, but about the only commercial we have is the Main Street, Manchester Road, Old Route 66, which is a long road through the town and has scattered commercial on it. And I just wondered, the pictures you were showing, you know, Chillicothe and other places are little towns, one building right after the other. How does, have you been able to work with a more rural setting where you have roadhouses and general stores and schoolhouses and things scattered along a long stretch of road?
Sure. Yeah. Some of our communities are set up like that, where it's not, or it's like older or newer type development that isn't necessarily, you know, back to back to back to back there. With that, so yeah, there is some precedence with that. I'm working in a smaller community right now that has some, you know, side by side buildings, but then they have a lot of like buildings that were built in the you know, 60s, 70s, 80s that are also along that route too. So we take a mix of them for sure.
Because I was thinking, like, we've got one good example, and that's the Big Chief Roadhouse, which has been doing well and has been promoting itself and as an historical feature along there. But there's other buildings, like right across the street, there's an old filling station, you know, automotive shop, I guess. But yeah, it's not at its highest use now, and it could be have a much better use. Further on down, there's other buildings that I think could be better used, and you know, that's what I would like to see done. I don't know how feasible, and since these are privately owned, these people, we just want to make sure they don't tear them down. I guess that's all I'm saying. So.
You're speaking to my heart, but start preservation background, so I get it.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. I have Councilmember Dodwell on the list. Looks like she found her hand thing, and then we've got Councilmember Clark with her hand up. Dan, did I skip you, or are you okay, Dan?
I'm good.
Okay, I saw it under the participant. I thought I saw a hand. Okay. All right, Councilmember Dodwell.
I just wanted to check and see if through this process you all provide design recommendations for the types of buildings that could go up in between some of our historical buildings, so that we can keep the same, work to keep similar architectural form where possible, but also bring in some of the modern forms. A lot of our building codes, I think, take us back to a little bit more what you saw in the 40s, 50s with businesses below and office space or homes above. kind of thing. So I'm thinking of the corridor of Manchester from 109 west through Pond. There's a lot of businesses in there, and then the corridor from there's part of Old Manchester once you get past the home developments on the outer edge there. But I know some of that's been switched back over to home and or condos or apartments in some cases. So I'm just trying to figure out how we tie all of those things together.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can help with. And I think with that technical visit, that is definitely something that we can help with, to give recommendations on what some of those, potential infill buildings would look like. But that's definitely something that with my background I can help with too, but then they can give actual facade renderings on, hey, this is what an appropriate looking building would look like there that would fit in with the aesthetics of your
Okay.
community
Okay.
there. So yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a great use of that technical visit there.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got Councilmember Clark, followed by Commissioner Rounton.
Thanks, Chair Eden. I've got a question maybe for you or for Mr. Venich. I think it's wonderful project or program to be involved with, and if it fits. But my question is, have we had this kind of question before? Have we had this kind of a issue come up before that we needed help on, or have we been able to appropriately do all of our buildings and keep them in the Wildwood style without outside help? I'm just wondering if this was a need that we had and we're fitting a service to that need, or if we're taking a service and trying to find a need to fit it.
Well, I think that was probably directed at Mr. Vunich, but I would say that maybe not so much on the buildings, but certainly on extending what would be considered, I suppose, public works capital improvements that have an economic development benefit. I would say that that is something that we still have an existing need for and haven't always been successful in our attempts. And some of the things he mentioned that are included in grants, unless I misunderstood, was even, beautification of business districts as well.
And Ms. Clark, I think from the perspective of the department towards your question, we have always relied upon in-house expertise, so to speak, our Architectural Review Board, our Historic Preservation Commission, to provide advice and direction on what's best for these infill projects or renovations to existing historic buildings. I would note, though, that Main Street, this particular organization, brings a wealth of experience from other areas of the state, which sometimes we lack. And so there may be a very good fit for the city of Wildwood. Thank you.
Thank you. That helps me.
Commissioner Rounton?
Yeah, Ben, I'm hearing two things. One, I'm hearing the historical aspect and the services you provide. But at the same time, I'm also hearing about the economic support that you provide. And yes, we have a lot of history, but yes, we're a very new city and we have a very new Main Street. And can we apply your grant for our new Main Street and still gain the economic development expertise that you provide in a not so old setting, for instance?
Tradition or a new setting.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. My answer is going to be maybe, because I think that's something that we need to explore further together. I mean, because the Main Street model works whether it's new or old. We just got to make sure I think that there's enough there to revitalize, and that the need is there, and that it still makes sense that our particular model works for your community there. Like you said, at our core, we're historic preservation, but we're also economic development using historic preservation practices there. And so our goal is economic development and revitalization of communities there. And so it can work. Absolutely. Because again, that's kind of our core principle is we like to see thriving communities using a lot of our methodology here.
I mean, Lauren's talking about the fact that there's some things that have worked very well and there's some things that we're lagging with.
Yeah.
And can we identify those areas in which we're lagging? And is that something that your team could apply some expertise to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we, at the very beginning of it, do that town hall meeting and that digital survey information. And so immediately we dive into that as our team here and say, okay, this popped up over and over and over again. How do we throw resources at that? What can we do? What can we provide as means of our resources? Community's done this, let's provide those resources that they've done in another community, because I think it would work in this case as well. And so, yeah, absolutely. We tackle all of those things, especially that the community wants. We tackle it head on with resources there. From our expertise to, okay, community's done this, let's tackle it from that end as well there.
So based on that discussion, what would be the plan of attack? What would the next steps be?
Well, the next step would be to attend that grant workshop first, either that one on February 2nd of next year, May 4th or August 17th, just to see and explore further whether we think this would be something that could fit there in Wildwood as a potential methodology for economic development. Like you said, we're economic development, but again, we're really based on historic preservation. And so we'd really have to talk further into seeing if this was a good way to do that economic development is through this Main Street methodology here. And so I think that would be the first thing that we could do, because that provides just an in-person opportunity to talk about whether it would work or not. And again, we dive way more into what the Main Street model is and what the community empowerment grant model is, and what we do throughout that programming there. And then provides ample opportunities to kind of figure out, okay, would this work? Would this not work? And then we go from there. So that would be the next steps, is to attend one of those grant workshops to talk about it even further. And in that meantime too, I can even do some additional research and kind of talk to some people on our staff here to see what that would be. Is there a cost for that training session? There is not a cost. And so what it is, it's a 2-hour meeting itself, where we, again, kind of first hours we talk about Main Street, the second hour we talk about the community empowerment grant. There's an optional lunch and learn that we do with that. And so that is from, so the actual training meeting itself, workshop starts at 10 o'clock and runs until 12. We have an optional lunch and learn with a Main Street professional, usually a director from another Main Street program, that talks about what the Main Street methodology has done for their community, done for their downtown. And so that's an optional lunch and learn for $15. And that just covers our cost for a box lunch for the lunch in the actual, for that session there too. That is, again, optional. You don't have to stay for that, but it is some great information for someone that's already out in the field and how they are utilizing that Main Street approach, and some successes that they've had from it. That's a good question.
Excellent question. Councilmember Clark, your hand is still up. Is this a new?
It's a new question.
Okay.
So who would go to that workshop? And is this made up of just city employees would be part of the 501c3, or from our EDC group, or I don't really understand who would be doing all of this, the work, and who would be involved in that. Would it just be the city employees and add more work to them?
Great questions. So to that grant workshop, we like to try to just have at least a couple people there that can bring the information back to the community. We don't need 15 people showing up to it. Well, we like to have more than one person showing up to it. With that 501c3 and the composition of it, it shouldn't just be city people. It shouldn't just be adding more work to city employees there. What we like is to have a good mix of people. So it could be city people, could be county people, could be people from the Historic Preservation Commission, Parks Board, community members that are just interested in revitalizing and working to further the community's goals for economic development. And so you'll find many times out of that town hall meeting, you find people that are interested in serving on that board, that are interested in those kinds of efforts. And so one thing that we do from that town hall meeting is we get all of the information, so you can immediately, send an email blast and make phone calls to those types of people that have shown interest in being on that board. But no, it shouldn't be city people, because city people obviously have enough on their plate there, and so we don't want to add more to that. We like to have them as a partner in these efforts, but it shouldn't just be an arm of the city to do that. It should be multiple facets, multiple organizations, multiple different kinds of people involved in those efforts there.
Okay, we've got Commissioner Scott, followed by Councilmember Dodwell. We did have a question just pop up in the chat, which I assume she meant in regards to the training session, which you did say was in person in Jefferson City.
Correct. Yeah. And so we have an early meeting called a startup meeting, which is kind of just this is what you need to do for a town hall. That's virtual. But then all of the sessions that we do, we come to the community and give those trainings there. But yes, that grant workshop is in person on purpose, so we can have and answer those questions that we need to with that. We did some virtual stuff with the pandemic, but we find that we get more engagement and with having it in person. So it'll be in Jefferson City in person for that grant workshop there.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott.
Yes. I think this is probably more to the committee than to Ben, but we're losing a lot of residences because people want to build their McMansions there. But I feel next we're going to be losing these old commercial buildings along 66. Unless we find a higher, more commercial development for those buildings. I mean, they're owned, but I think somehow we've got to encourage more development. And one building I'm thinking of is the Pond Inn that's been, renovated, or they started, they stopped, it's for sale. We're gonna lose that building unless we can find a good, solid, profitable commercial development there. So I think we've got to work together to develop and to maintain our Main Street.
Fair points, Scott, fair points. And hopefully, having an established plan and a branding kit and things like that will go a long way. Councilmember Dodwell. Councilmember Dodwell?
I'm coming. Sorry.
Okay, there she goes.
I'm doing two things, maybe three or four at a time. To tag on to the question that was just asked, I would think that we would want to develop, we've already got with our historic preservation group a list of buildings that are considered historical along that whole stretch. But part of the issue with, say, the Pond Inn is because our local utilities do not go out to that far. So in order to have a facility where people can work or where people can have a restaurant or something along those lines, you have to have water and you have to have sewer. And that's a challenge here within the city that we're dealing with right now. Would this grant be able to be utilized in the costs for those types of improvements, or do they have to be visual improvements for specific businesses?
So this grant specifically is a grant for services. So there's no monetary that we provide on our end for those types of services. So it's again a grant for services to help take you through that that whole development process of strategies there. And so so there's no grant money that is actually granted as part of this. You get our time, you get our resources, you get our holding throughout this entire process to take you through.
Okay, then let me ask the question. Let me ask the question a different way. Do you all know about grants that can be used to be able to implement those kinds of services to that part of the community that is still very historical in perspective, and be able to assist the city with getting said grants?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have someone on staff that is her entire job, is to help look for grants for not only our organization, but for all the other organizations that we service across the state. And so she is someone that is also involved with this process. Once we kind of figure out, okay, these are the different projects that we want to do, these are different events that we want to do, actually bring her in for one of those development trainings in the community itself. Once we kind of figured out, okay, this is kind of what we're currently doing, this is where we really want to go, whether it's in the immediate or pie in the sky in the future here, and really dive into how we actually fund these types of efforts, whether it's through grants, whether it's through local funding, whether it's state funding, all those types of things.
Donations.
So that is, yeah. And so she actually puts out monthly something called the Grant Resource Directory that has grants specifically for those types of purposes. And so she is just an absolute wealth of knowledge, someone ear to the ground on all those things. And if she doesn't know the answer to it, she will do the research, happily to do the research for those types of efforts.
That's wonderful. We
Yes,
take
absolutely.
advantage of
Yeah.
that.
So yes, so we do have someone on staff to help with those kinds of efforts there to help kind of facilitate that.
Thank you.
Mr. White, just one more quick question. Are you looking at doing future pilot projects like you are doing in Del Mar on a smaller scale for communities like ours, where it would be very kind of individualized? And was that $100,000 in services that they got, or was that something totally different because it was a pilot project?
Yeah, so that was helped facilitated by actually a grant that we got for services there too. And so we're actually working with 3 districts there in St. Louis. Yep, Dutchtown, Del Mar, and Laclede's Landing there. And so we're just starting to dabble more in kind of the urban setting with that, but that was actually helped facilitated by a grant that we helped receive to provide those services in the community there too.
Okay, thank you for the further explanation.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
just to kind of direct the movement, since we're an hour in, so it sounds like there's support for staff to maybe have an offline discussion together, and to consider going to that February 2nd training. Does that sound about right, council members and committee members? Is that something that you are interested in doing as staff members? Exploring this further, perhaps? Yeah. Okay. Is it a new question, Councilmember Clark? Nope. Okay. It's okay. The hand was still up, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't skip you. So since there's really not a cost, I mean, other than, a gas being refunded, if for some reason there would have to be an overnight stay, or really for that box lunch, there'd be such a low fiscal note. Are you looking for a formal motion to approve any expenditures on that, Mr. Cross, tonight?
I don't think there's necessarily a motion needs to be made about the cost, but if the committee desires to make a motion to have someone to be determined attend either one of those training sessions, that would be the appropriate motion. I would like to throw out an idea, however, and Mr. White can answer this because again, Ben, you were talking about, it's in person in Jeff City. What if, because there are some communities that we partner with around the city of Wildwood that are a little older and have older areas. What if we were able to, get a few folks from those other communities here at Wildwood, and you all came here and did that grant training? But the benefit of that would be you would be able to make that presentation to the city of Wildwood, the city of Ellisville, the city of Manchester, who might, avail themselves of your services. Would that be possible?
Nah, probably not. Like I said, we just do it for these 3 grant rounds here, and we like to do it in a central location. And so, we have people that are come from all over the state there to do it. And so that's why we do in that central location, is try to do it all in one shot. So unfortunately that would not be something that we would do.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So Chair Eden said, the motion, if someone wishes, would be for someone to attend one of those grant sessions, grant training sessions.
Yes, one or more members of staff to attend. Let's shoot for the February 2nd, but if not, again, there's also May 4th and August 17th, if someone would like that language included in the motion. Councilmember Dodwell, is your hand up?
Yes, my hand's up.
Okay, are you making the motion?
I will make the motion, but I want to make an edit on said motion.
Okay.
I think it would behoove us to have more than just a city staff member attend. I think we need either the chair of economic development and or the chair of historic preservation to attend, so that we have some community individuals and we don't have staff feel like they have to own this whole thing. Because I'm going to push really hard as a council member to get community engagement for anything like this. And we can have planning and parks do review of any build out that would occur and work with those teams. But I just think our city staff is extremely overworked right now. And I'd rather us get some community engagement started up ASAP to start driving some of this, if that's what we want to do.
I'd be more than welcome to go. I'd be happy to do so, but I can't physically apply for the grant for the city, so I'd have to be in addition to a staff member no matter what. So
yeah, we need to have a staff member attend,
yes,
so that we can apply for the grant. I just wanted to see if that would be of any benefit to Mr. Cross or not. So.
Ms. Dodwell, I absolutely agree that, and again, that's why I said for someone or someone's plural, attend this grant training. So yes, it doesn't sound like we're limited necessarily. I don't believe Mr. White said that, and I think it would actually be in our best interest to have several people there. So that could be 2, 3, 4. So whatever the committee sees fit. But I agree, Councilmember Dodwell, that there should be a mix of folks attending that session if you all feel that it's beneficial to go to that session.
And we can just essentially get the motion on the floor with the option of the 3 dates, and nobody in addition has to commit to going until we know what date for sure that is best for staff to attend, hopefully in February. Councilmember McCutcheon? Is that a
Yeah,
second?
I guess, no, I have a question.
Okay. Can we
So,
get,
I'm guessing my question should go to Steve is, so since there is a cost to this project, do we have funding available that can be utilized for this? Or is this something we need to go back to council requesting funds to do the project?
What is the cost to this program?
It's for the matching grant, it's 12,320. That's for the 2-year grant program there.
Well, yes, something like that, Ms. McCutcheon, definitely should come out of this committee, but yes, that should then go to council for approval because that will have to come out of somebody's line item budget. Probably somewhere in Mr. Vunich's budget. So, so that will need approval, yes.
Thank you.
it's good to ask to look down the road if we actually do get the program. Okay, can I get a second on the floor for the motion on the table? Okay, if we don't have a second, the motion's going to fail. Seconded by Councilmember Flasher. Okay, all those in favor with economic development making a statement that we would like to send one or more persons from the city of Wildwood, including a minimum of 1 staff member, potentially commissioners or council members, to the Main Street Extension Grant Workshop, either to be held on February 2nd, May 4th, or August 17th. Is that language acceptable with the maker and second of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain?
I'll abstain.
Councilmember McCutcheon abstains. Okay, all right. It looks like we're gonna hopefully get to work with you again. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting, Mr. White, and our presentation. Thanks to Dan Roughton and Commissioner Scott from Historic Preservation for being on the meeting as well. And we're just going to go ahead and continue and finish up pretty quickly. All right, let's move on. We've got some for information updates. We had some intermediary emails that went out, so you all should be aware that our Shop Local winter campaign is going on with both a Small Business Saturday news update, website update, social media update, and just a general holiday local update as well. Window painting's looking good. Students are a little late on signing up, but I think it's because they're finishing up their finals, and so I'm starting to get a lot more emails. We've had great interest. We've got about 15 locations that should be painted. Steve or Joe, do you have an update on Toys for Tots? Is that going to happen this year, or is that probably not?
The receptacles for the Toys for Tots are here at City Hall. We have 2 at the front entrance on the first floor, and we have 2 at the back entrance. So those were put up yesterday.
Did the Y get theirs yet? Because there was supposed to be one for the YMCA as well, 1 to 2. Or should I just I could have Julie pick up 2 of ours.
I don't know. Joe, do you have an update on that?
I do not, Mr. Cross, but under the worst case scenario, we could give them 1 of ours from one of the locations.
Right.
Okay. All right, I can give her a call tomorrow to make sure she gets her done. Okay, I want to thank our city administrator and director of planning and parks for some crisis management that went on behind the scenes through no fault of our own for our December 4th tree lighting. They have had a lot of extra hours on this and the snowman search, and so the point is that it's still happening. So I just wanted to personally thank them for all the work they've done. Snowman search, it's not going to be what it was before, and attendance in terms of businesses is not going to be the same as it was before for the tree lighting. But the feedback in general, which was the same feedback that we had for the WBA's Halloween walk, is they just can't spare the individuals. Normally on the weekend, maybe they have extra staff, but they're just running such a tight ship right now with the number of employees that they just can't run a booth, even for free, even if we put the booth up for them. So it is what it is. It's obviously better than 2020 and having nothing. Okay, any questions, comments, concerns about any of that that's going on? If not, we'll move on. All right, rolling right along. So we have a couple of stuff that is not ready for action. One of the things that Mr. Cross and I have talked about is, as we've sent emails out trying to register businesses for these, holiday winter events, is that there's been some bounce backs, and there's been a couple of different reasons. As one is, a lot of the contacts we have with businesses are with employees. So if that employee retires, they leave for any reason, then we no longer have an active email with that business. Another reason is that we're sort of triggering some sort of firewall, and so they're getting a security alert when they see our email come through. I know that that's happened to me when I've had to email somebody at MDNR, for example. So Steve's on it. One of the things we've discussed is doing a review of business licenses to make sure that every business that we know exists, that we have a current contact for, and that's one of our goals, is to kind of get up to speed on that. One of the things that I was thinking about, and Steve and I will talk about this more after the new year, would be some sort of e-newsletter or mailer that would probably be quarterly to our businesses, especially since we don't have a dedicated staff member. That connection is hard to maintain unless you have a lot of time to foster it and call and kind of check on stuff. How I learned of businesses closing was word of mouth, and not through direct communication. So anything we can do to kind of tie everything together, and it might be a nice thing just to have in general as well. And then hopefully after budget season, Steve will have some more time, and we'll try to update the economic development guide and not just wait for a new hire. And bless him, I gave him some actual academic development textbooks I still had on a bookshelf. So I know he's just going to enjoy reading and just love me for it. Other business news and updates. I did go to the Government Relations and Transportation Forum that the West St. Louis Chamber of Commerce held. Some of the news is business related, some isn't. But I will just tell you one of the things that could be coming up is Rockwood, and I did let them know that Wayfair reform happened at the state level, and municipalities are looking at a different, form of sales tax. Rockwood is considering something that they're going to call Prop P, which would be moving away from bonding in general. They just don't want to, I suppose, collect debt, and would like to have an increased foresight into what they're able to do in the future with just a direct tax. So they may not put that on the April ballot, but I'm really not sure. Both Rockwood and Parkway were super successful with vaccine boosters for employees, and then vaccines for children. Manchester has continued to do a lot of work with their veterans programs. Parkway's providing meals directly to parents and children, and Manchester has been partnering with other food pantries as well. Ellisville Police Chief, City of Manchester Police Chief would like to remind everybody to please lock your car door. And they also want everybody to know that smash and grabs are increasing along with violent crime. If you have a firearm, please do not leave it in the vehicle. They have had firearms stolen and used in a homicide within the same night in West County. So please don't do that. All right, Metro West wanted to remind everybody to please avoid space heaters, especially if there would be an issue with the natural gas pipeline and you might be chilly. Please don't leave them unattended. Community Partners and Prevention is still doing their drug prevention plan. They have a Show Me ID app that they're encouraging businesses to use, and I don't know if that's something that we would want to contact businesses about or not, but the idea is that it makes it easier to spot fakes that are made in bulk overseas or in the US, and prevent illegal purchases of goods. Manchester is doing a new city building, renovating City Hall. 60 McBride homes are moving in near Costco. I'm sure you all drove past that as well. There is a 141 corridor project. So they are putting an RFP out for essentially a whole economic revitalization of that area where that old Home Depot was at. So at 100 in Manchester, if you guys know right where the old Home Depot was. Not on the Costco side, on the opposite side. And redistricting, we're not expecting dramatic changes in the county, but the population north of Highway 70 has shifted to the south and southwest. Gateway Studios in Chesterfield is going through their groundbreaking. Just a reminder that the airport tipped the contract over the edge. It was between Georgia, Nashville, and Chesterfield. The St. Louis Community College has a new transfer degree in engineering, so you can start and get your, basically it's associates, but you start 2 years, and then you can transfer to a 4-year school in engineering, and it's accredited. And there's a new medical billing degree. There's 70% in person and hopefully 90% in person in the spring. And that, oh, a couple more things. Sorry, it was a long meeting. There's a lot of notes. Senator Schatz's office was there. One of the things he's interested in is looking at mechanical contractors to make it easier to get a licensing. Eliminating gray box gambling. He's currently pro tem, looking at future options. Governor Parsons' office was there and mentioned that they were happy with the recovery of the pandemic. At the height, it was 12.5% unemployment. It is 3.8% now. That is a change from over 38,000 to now 15,000 on unemployment. We are 3rd in the nation on apprenticeship programs, 4th for new manufacturing facilities, 13 in broadband. St. Charles was specifically mentioned for infrastructure broadband changes. And that is about it. Questions? Okay, all right. Seeing nothing on news and updates, I would highly recommend a motion to cancel our December 21st meeting and continue with our regularly scheduled January meeting. Made by Councilmember Clark, seconded by Councilmember Galani. Okay, I'm gonna assume, because I know we don't have the new calendar yet, that we'll be back at our 6 o'clock regular start time in January. Does that sound right, Steve?
I think it does, yes.
Okay, all right. So we'll send that out. So thanks again for meeting this week. I really appreciated it. Since we aren't meeting again until the end of January, it was really helpful to have this now in case somebody wanted to attend February 2nd in Jeff City. So I hope you can see why it was important to have a meeting in November. I really, again, appreciate your time. If there's no other questions, then I will entertain a motion to close.
Motion to close.
Made by Councilmember Ottenberg, seconded by Councilmember Galani. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, have a wonderful holiday. Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
holiday.
Bye.